Thank you for joining another episode of Tagged, a business tips and triumph series. On this show, we feature creative women entrepreneurs and uncover their secrets to success. I'm your host, Leanne Tasher, and it's my pleasure to introduce our next guest, Dr. Lesley Reece. For those who are not familiar with you, can you introduce yourself and say a bit about your professional background?
Sure. So I'm here in this capacity as a life coach, but I'm also a medical doctor. I've been a medical doctor for the last 17 years, working for the last 7 years in the area of palliative care. And I've been a life coach for the last 2 years, where I work with women only, helping them to achieve what I consider to be a life well lived.
And that is beautiful. What inspired you to start your coaching service, Life by Lesley?
Well, it all started because I started to notice in myself that there were things that some self-work that I needed to do, basically to control the narrative. There were things that were happening in my life that I wasn't happy about. I knew for sure that a lot of it was because of me having low self-worth. And I got to a point where I recognized, okay, Lesley, you need to do something about this. Otherwise, it's just going to, the things that are happening to you will just keep happening and happening over and over again. I'm talking about things like not showing up in terms of my career, like really going after what I wanted. I've been the victim of abusive relationships, more than one. And, it dawned on me, like, there is some role that you have to play in this. I'm not blaming myself as a victim, but I think it's important for us to do some introspection and think about, okay, there's a common denominator here, and that's me. So what do I have to do differently? And in doing that work, I grew a whole set. I was able to see the changes in myself. Others were able to see the changes in me. And I firmly believe that God rested on my heart. Well, I allowed you to go through those things because now I want you to help other women and even young girls so that you can help them to develop better self-worth and more self-love. And I took that to heart. And that's when Life by Lesley was started. I actually started by doing inspirational posts on Instagram with an account called Life by Lesley. Little did I know that things would grow into what it is now. Certainly coaching was not on my radar at the time, but here we are.
So how do issues such as limiting beliefs and low self-esteem typically develop?
A lot of it comes from the way that you've been raised. And really and truly, the way that we are as adults, it's all boils down to how we were raised, the beliefs that we grew up hearing, the values that we grew up seeing, and the people who were our primary caretakers. And what I like to say is think of all your beliefs, your values, your priorities as a quilt. And every caretaker that you have had in your life has giving you a piece of this quilt, and we've put them all together to create the person that we are. So in thinking about your childhood, for instance, did you grow up in a situation where you were allowed to speak loudly and express yourself? Were you constantly shushed? All the little things that we hear are what contribute to our ideas of self-worth or limiting beliefs. So it's important as we get older, like to do active work to try to get past those.
And that makes sense. So speaking of, having to overcome these blocks or issues that people often experience, what strengths are better suited for a person to actually be successful in business? And how do you help persons to unlock this confidence and feel ready to just dominate in whatever area they're in?
Well, you called the word right there, confidence. I think it's important for persons to have a high sense of self-worth and self-worth as opposed to self-esteem. So the two are usually used interchangeably, but self-esteem is more so your reaction to what's external. So your appearances, what you have, how much success you've garnered, whereas self-worth is more about the value that you know you inherently have. So for that reason, when your circumstances change, that can affect your self-esteem. When your circumstances change, that doesn't affect your self-worth because you know that you are worthy and you are valuable, regardless of what is happening around you. And that's one of the greatest strengths that you need to carry into any situation. Like you mentioned earlier that my programs help persons, not just in business, but also in their personal lives, in their romantic lives, because the tenets are the same regardless. You know, the foundation has to be the same. You have to have a foundation of high self-worth, high self-love, and you need to be comfortable enough to communicate it in different ways in the appropriate settings to others around you so that you can truly be successful.
I love how you embody what you preach. It's not just that you're telling people what to do, but you yourself went through these things. What are some of the opportunities that you may have never imagined yourself pursuing, but after you have gone through that process, you took accountability and you pursued Life by Lesley. And now, I mean, you were a bit modest during your introduction. You are a powerhouse in my eyes. You've written books, you do motivational speaking, you're a mom, you play so many roles, so many important roles. So how has your life transformed since becoming empowered?
It really, really has, because it's always good for me to look back. And my friends, a phrase that my friends always hear from me, and they're probably sick and tired of hearing it, is Lesley 5 years ago would never have done that, or never been bold enough to do, say, whatever. And for me, I love the fact that I've been through the same process that I take my clients through because I can show them, you know, I've been where you are. I can relate to you. Don't ever think that, you know, I'm just standing here on my soapbox and spitting to you without really knowing what you're going through, right? Because then how can I really help you if I don't understand what you're going through? So to say that I am humbled by my own life experiences and how far I've come, and I think it all boils down to just determination and deciding that, you know, enough is enough. It can't be enough for me to just go through every day and say, you know, there has to be more to life than this. As I've heard so many other people say, there is more to life than whatever that this is for you. But you have to go out there and search for it and reach for it. And what I want people to remember is that things don't happen overnight. Like you have to wait. There's a waiting period, but while you're waiting, you're working. And if you decide, oh, it's going to take 5 years, so I can't be bothered, the 5 years are still going to pass, regardless of if you're doing it or not. So you might as well be working to what it is that you really, really want, so that when the time comes, you're proud of your accomplishments, you're proud of your achievements, and you're proud of putting in the work to achieve what it is that you wanted to achieve.
And I would add to that by saying, don't be daunted by maybe at first, if it feels painful, to unpack all those emotions, face all of those difficult limiting beliefs, because there are people out here like you who are an example that it's possible. So
Of
have hope,
course.
have hope.
Yeah.
And yes, and so you would also know that there is a relationship between self-worth and how you show up in the world. But how does this show up in business in terms of, does it affect someone's pricing of their products and services?
Oh, for sure. And I see so many women, especially, who underestimate their value, so they underprice themselves. And I myself had been guilty of that. And the way that I got over it is through conversations with my business coach. And she said, Lesley, don't even look at it necessarily as the amount of work that you have put in or how easily or how difficult it was for you to put together, let's say, a program or to write one of your books. Think of the value, how much you are going to change this person's life once they use your product or your service. And once you start to look at it that way, then you realize, okay, yeah, I really need to price this a little higher than what I've been doing. Granted, there's all the psychology of pricing and it doesn't hurt you if you have, let's say, a suite of products. You can create products that if you want to reach as many people as possible, or if you want to reach different demographics of people because there will be some people who may want to do your $1,000 program, but just cannot afford it. And that's fine. So you create a product that will still give them value. And you never know, they may make a point of it. Once they've done that product that costs less, they may make a point of it to make sure that they can get into one of these same coaching programs that costs $1,000. So it's important for us in pricing our services to think of the value that you are going to add to some person's life. And in many cases, especially if it is what I like to call a heart-centered service, such as what I do, the impact that you're going to have is almost invaluable. You can't put a price on that. You can't put a price on somebody who is finally showing up for themselves in their business. You cannot put a price on somebody who is finally showing up for themselves personally and avoiding burnout and having much better relationships with their loved ones. You cannot put a price on a woman finally being able to show up as a confident, self-assured woman that she is, and choosing a partner who recognizes and appreciates that in her rather than the string of emotionally unavailable men that she's been experiencing before. You can't put a price on that.
Definitely. And you touched on another interesting factor when you said your service comes from the heart. And I know many women can relate to that. They want to do things that are passion for them. And honestly, when we have passions, it's usually something we would be willing to do for free. So then that becomes another issue. It's like, I really want to do this. First of all, I don't know. I'm not confident in pricing my products and services based on what they're worth, but I want to help people. I'm so eager to help people. So can I just do it for free? But then how are you going to eat? So it's like this balance between your passion and then still making it profitable. So what would you say to someone like that? Like they have this extra layer of guilt because they want to help people, but it's like, it can compound the issue of the self-worth issue and then the passion of just wanting to help. What would you say to that person?
So your question immediately takes me to a conversation that I had with my business coach, and it was surrounding the ick of selling, right? So for some people, selling feels icky. Asking somebody to pay you money for a service that you are offering, especially as you said, a service that you love, you're passionate about, you would do this for free, feels icky. But what she reminded me, she said, Lesley, selling is the highest form of service that you can give to somebody else. You are giving them something that will change their life, right? And sometimes for people to truly see the value in what you're offering, they have to pay for it. They have to take responsibility in that way. And you giving something like that to somebody, not only does it hurt you and hurt your bottom line, I mean, we live in a world where everything costs money, but it doesn't teach them to hold themselves accountable and to, put in what they need to put in to get what they consider to be valuable.
I think that is powerful.
Yeah. And then there's always the thing that we hear all people pay for what they consider important to pay for. You know, that's just the long and short of it. So I think it's important for us to get past the ick factor of selling and remember that selling is the highest form of service that you could give to somebody else.
I love that.
So yeah, create your product, create your service, and sell. You'll change lives like that.
I love it. I think that's very encouraging. I think those are very powerful words. Do you think that you would have reached the level of success that you are at today without your business coach or a mentor? How important is a mentor in your opinion?
A mentor is really, really, really important. And I think it's important for us to remember that a mentor doesn't necessarily have to be somebody that you're even necessarily in contact with. Your mentor could be somebody that you follow who you admire and you see their posts and you admire the way that they show up for themselves in business, in life, in romance, whatever it is that they're sharing with you out there. It doesn't necessarily have to be somebody that you have conversations with. Yes, you can have mentors like that, but mentorship, extremely important. I don't know that I would be where I am now without my business coach. I am always referring to stuff that, because I write a lot. So I'm always referring to things I would have written down, little nuggets that I would have written down from our previous sessions, even our first sessions that we would have had. Um, would I have reached her at all? I'm not sure because there's so many gems that she would have shared with me. Might I have picked them up from somebody else? Maybe. But I feel more self-assured knowing that, I made a decision for myself that I wanted to advance my business. And for me, a part of that was working with a coach because I know I myself don't have a background in business. She taught me lots of things that I didn't know. And, it was the best investment that I could have made, not just in my business, but in myself.
Definitely. So in the business world, you also need confidence to deal with rejection and criticism. How do you support your clients in dealing with these challenges?
I make it very simple and remind them that one, rejection is a part of life, and I'll expand on that some more. And two, you being rejected is not a reflection of you or what you're offering, right? You being rejected is that the person just did not want it at that point in time for whatever reason. Now, I said rejection is a part of life. Every day, we are rejected in some way, whether we know it or not. And every day, we reject something or somebody every day, right? So imagine you as a woman scrolling through Instagram, you're looking for a new nail tech, for instance, and you look at 5 different profiles and you choose one. That means that you've just rejected 4. But you don't expect those 4 salons to shut shop because you rejected them, do you? Right? They just were not what you wanted or offering what you wanted at that point in time. That doesn't make them any less than. That doesn't mean that they're not worthy. That doesn't mean that somebody else isn't going to want to use their services. So I think that we need to apply that to our own lives and recognize that rejection is a part of life. And really and truly, it builds character. And the character that I think it builds is to recognize that I may not be everybody's cup of tea, but that doesn't make me any less delicious.
Ooh, I love that.
And
I love that.
as as far as criticism goes, I think we need to be more open to criticism. Criticism can really, really, really help you. And what I want people to remember is that oftentimes it takes a lot of courage for somebody to even share their constructive criticisms with you. And it would be good to approach that with an attitude of gratitude Because for the one person who actually was brave enough to come and share with you, there may be others who noticed and didn't say anything. And that criticism may be the thing that makes you more marketable, may make you more confident if you change something about it. So I tend not to view criticisms. I mean, yes, sometimes a constructive criticism can sting because who wants to know that, there's a flaw or what have you? But at the end of the day, usually it's for your betterment. And I would also suggest, make sure that you surround yourself with a circle of people who will always be honest with you. So even if a stranger reaches out and offers you constructive criticism or criticism that you're not sure is constructive, have that circle there that you can bounce that off of and see, if it's something that they noticed and perhaps didn't mention, or they didn't notice it really, but now that you've mentioned it, maybe you can make this adjustment, what have you, rather than just seeing both criticism and rejection as just negative things that we don't want in our sphere at all.
I think that perspective offers a lot of value. And to add another element, I'm remembering this interview that I watched where a lady said, I can't remember her name, but she said, I am not worried about being told no by people because I'm so yes by God. So that adds in the spiritual element where it's like, okay,
Yeah,
my spiritual faith also gets me through situations. So
of
I'll just
course.
add that to what you said.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you saying that actually makes me remember one, every disappointment is a new appointment from God, right? And two, every rejection could be a redirection from God.
Love it.
So just look at it as that's literally just life steering you in the way that you need to go. And, be okay with that. And again, that ties back into what you were asking earlier about having a negative mindset and being able to pull the positive bits from any apparent negativity that comes into our spheres.
And the truth is, when you look back, oftentimes you see where the dots connect, and you're actually grateful because, as you say, it builds character. You learn so much about yourself and you become so resilient. And I think you need a lot of that power to face your calling because it's going to call for
Mhm.
you to be stronger. And so it's almost just preparing you and readying you for your success. So that's another way to look at it as well. So
Sure.
speaking of lessons, what are some of the major business lessons you've learned since starting your coaching business?
Get a business coach. That's a
Wow.
big one.
Wow.
Another one is to never underestimate the value of having systems in your business. It's so important. So have a system, and systems aren't, this big, it don't have to be big fancy things, but just the way you do your scheduling. It could be pen and paper, make notes, prioritize certain things and stick to that. Get help where you need help. So whether that be having somebody helping you with virtual assisting, or whether that is somebody, if you're not great at content creation, for instance, but you have a social media presence, getting somebody to help you with that. If it is that after spending all the hours in your business, you just cannot bear the thought of having to clean or cook, outsource that, right? So I always say if there's something that you dislike doing and you can afford to pay somebody to do it, then do that. It makes your life so much more easy. So that's the big lesson for me. Like have systems in place and actually use them.
Okay, so for those who may not be familiar with what a system is, not to go too deep into it, but
Um,
is it basically a step-by-step breakdown of your operation, of what you have to
oh
do?
no, when I say systems, I just mean, yeah, so how your day-to-day goes. So for instance, one system that I use is that I use a weekly planner. And at the start of every week on Sunday evenings, when I'm in a very relaxed state, I will write down what I need to do for the week. It's going to be separated into the things that are highest priority, just my to-dos, my appointments, and then I make any other little notes in terms of what I want to achieve in that week. And I keep referring to that planner for the entire week. Every day I refer to the planner because doing that is easier than me having everything in my head. And, things are constantly being added. Every day we're having a conversation with somebody. If you're in business, there will be people calling you for your services or asking you or making appointments or what have you. So every day stuff is being added. And then there's stuff from your personal life. You got to pick up your son at 4 p.m. on Wednesday instead of 3 p.m. on Thursday. So it's good to write things down or store things into your phone that you can always refer to it. Up to today, I said to a colleague of mine, she was saying that her mind was all over the place. So I said, well, have you written a list of the things? And she said, no, she has a list in her head. So I said, get a pen and paper and write the list now.
Yeah. Something as simple as a pen and paper can be
Yeah,
so
exactly,
powerful.
right? So that's why I said systems don't have to be complex. It could be, whatever I consider a system to be, however you can set your business up or even a small aspect of your business that will help you to be more efficient. And in helping you to be more efficient, it takes a less stress off of you and it makes you a generally more pleasant person to be around.
And that's great news. Yeah, because I can imagine the anxiety associated with being overwhelmed and having so many ideas swirling around in your head. I do the same thing. I don't even bother to try to remember a lot of things. I just write it down and then I feel
Yes.
that stress level just decrease instantly.
Yeah.
I
Yep.
even
It's
have the
really important.
ability to schedule when I worry about something. It's like, okay, I'm taxed for the day. I'll think about that
Mhm.
tomorrow. I'll solve that
Mhm.
problem tomorrow. So
Yeah.
Lesley, what I really find so unique about you as well is that you're passionate about medicine and you're a medical doctor, but you're also extremely creative and it comes through in your books because you're an author. And I really would love to know more about your creative process with your books and some key takeaways from each book as well.
Okay. So my creative process is basically that I take snippets from the things that I see every day. Whether it's the interactions that I have personally, the interactions that I see other people have, the things that I see people post. And when I say the things that I see people post, I don't mean that I see somebody post something and I say, oh, I'm going to take that and make that mine. But I think there are a lot of messages out there that are not as, they're too cut and dry, right? So life is a lot more nuanced than that. So I like to take messages like those and then expand on them to really explain that life is more nuanced than this meme is suggesting, right? It's not as simple as, oh, I'm down for whoever's down for me, or, or if I'm not hearing you every day, then I must not matter. Like, no, I would turn something like that into perhaps is that you need to reach out to make sure that person is okay. And it's not that, that you're just not hearing from them. So things like that. So I have an ebook called The Self-Care Manual That You Didn't Know You Needed, which is very specifically titled because many of us think that we have self-care covered and we really, really don't. We overthink self-care. We think that it is spa days and massages and that it must include a lot of time or a whole day off or lots of money, or we think that it has to be a reward happening on a birthday or an anniversary or what have you. So I really go into depth in that ebook, not just on what self-care is and practical ways to approach it, but I also talk about boundary setting, there's a little bit in there about self-love, saying yes as a form of self-care. So it really encompasses a bit more than self-care and goes into a little bit of what I do in my coaching programs. It only costs $5.95. That's less than a coffee from Starbucks. That's $5.95 US. And I've gotten really, really good responses from all of the women who have read it. I'm a women's coach, so the voice is me speaking to women. But if there's a man out there who feels that he needs help with self-care, the book will be helpful for him too, once he can get past all the pink that's on the pages. And I also created a journal called the Self-Love Journal. And I love journaling personally, but I had issues with journals that I've found before that so every time I travel, I buy a journal just to collect. And my issues with most of the journals out there are just glorified notebooks. So a plain notebook with a pretty cover, which is cool, or a journal that has loads and loads and loads of prompts, which can feel a bit overwhelming. So I wanted to kind of strike a middle ground, which is what I did in creating my journal. So there are some simple prompts with lots and lots of writing space. So a prompt like just my 2 cents or what happened was, and that would be at the top of the page just to start you writing and to get your process started as though you were talking to a girlfriend, right? Because those are the types of phrases that you would use, stuff like hear me out on this one. And then there are more in-depth prompts, which are related to the self-love aspect to help you think and reflect again on, where do my thoughts go? How can I better improve the way that I look at myself? How do I compare myself to others? Who are my role models? Why are they my role models? So prompts such as those, what would a perfect day for me look like? And again, I've gotten loads and loads of responses and reactions in the positive from women who have bought the journal and have used it. Loads of women use the journal and then bought more for their friends. So it's a great gift giver. It's available on Amazon. I'll leave the information with you, Leanne, so that you can share with your viewers. But both of those were really labors of love for me. They came from a need that I had that I recognized that other women needed as well. So, and because of the responses that I've gotten from them, I'm really happy that I heeded the call to create them.
Awesome. I feel like I've learned so much from you here today. This has been a very awesome conversation. Lesley, thank you for sharing your business tips and triumphs with us. And thank you also to all of the viewers for being here as well. You can follow Glamazine and our guest, Dr. Lesley Reece, using the links provided. And I hope you've enjoyed this episode, and we'll see you in the next one.